dun, 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 dun. Well, hello, welcome to the podcast. It's a podcast now, right?
Officially.
Okay. Do we have a name for it?
We're working on that.
Okay.
It's still early.
The tentatively titled something podcast about video for business. I am Ben Oliver.
I'm Justin Plant.
We're the co-founders of Storyboard Media, and we'll be your lovely hosts through every episode of this podcast.
Probably. I mean,
not just today.
Yeah, as a host for sure.
Yeah. Maybe get some guests in.
I'd like to be a guest once.
We could do that now.
Well,
I could just ask you a whole bunch of questions.
Let me start with the host thing. Let's just work on one thing at a time.
Okay. All right. I guess before we get started, is it important to try to drum up some sponsors? Do we want to stick with the same sponsors? Do we want to try different ones every episode? Okay. Let's try some new ones. Our lovely little show here is potentially someday brought to you by
You're
Dansk Mjød, Nordic honey wine with ginger hops added. Oh, ginger and hops added. See, now they're not going to pay us. That's Dansk Mjød, which is mead from Danish people.
Yeah.
It's 19% alcohol by volume, so I bet if we start it now, by the end of the podcast episode, we'll be just as enlightening.
I'd have a slight buzz, and you'd be
and I'd
really
be on
drunk.
the floor. All right, so welcome to the as yet unnamed podcast brought to you by Danish Mead.
Dansk Mjød. Yeah, I think maybe Mjød is mead.
Oh, I think so. I think it's Mjød.
Based on a recipe from about 1700.
Okay. Well, good, and that ties in perfectly with our topic today, which is, of course, the final 6 of the 7 phases of practicing video. I feel like in our last episode, we got to 1 phase of practicing video. And today we're going to try to cover 6.
Yeah.
How's that a thing?
Well, the first thing we discussed was strategy, which is 2 steps: diagnose and prescribe. And ultimately that's the foundation. As you see, we shape this thing like a pyramid. The bottom phase is all strategy, and it's the foundation for everything you're going to do with your videos.
Well, I think we even said in the last episode, which I do highly recommend our listeners listen to, probably even before listening to the rest of this episode. We can insert a 37-minute pause here and post and and just let them come back. Yes, just that for 37 minutes while they go listen to the other episode. That's how podcasts work, right? Real time. But I think we even said it is that essentially everything in phases 2 through 7 is just executing what you laid out in your strategy,
right?
Which should help us get through everything today in a reasonable amount of time anyway. I imagine we'll come back to strategy throughout and see kind of how it fits in. I have a feeling we're going to reference the Video Reformation Manifesto occasionally, because whenever we're talking about the phases,
to do that.
I like to come back to the manifesto. I like to make all of our, I don't want to call it thought leadership because that sounds a little tacky, but all of our brilliance generating content.
Humble.
Yes. All of that stuff, it does all kind of tie together, right? So
yeah, it does tie it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the rug in Lebowski's room.
Yes. Yep. So phases 2, 3, and 4 are essentially on that next level up from that foundation of strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think most people in the marketing space, even in sales and customer service, people who aren't actually necessarily in the video space tend to lump them all together too as just big P production.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to kind of break them out into the 3 distinct phases of production: pre-production, small p production, and post-production. So let's just kind of jump in then to pre-production. How first off, what are kind of the key element? What are we doing in pre-production? What's happening there?
I think we define it slightly differently. One of the first steps is taking your strategic concepts and fleshing those out into what become creative concepts.
Sure.
And so that's the first thing that we do in pre-production. And then once you've got your creative concept, you can start writing your script, casting, location scouting, getting your crew, all your hair, makeup, wardrobe, props, all those things, starting to assemble all of those things for what eventually becomes production.
And I feel like all those are kind of, to some extent, they're all creative decisions.
Right.
Right. Certainly when you're writing your script, there's maybe the tone of voice that you want to take in a script, or what are even the main features, benefits, bullet point, storyline, whatever that you want to share with that audience. Well, ideally, you're able to kind of apply strategic constraints to make simpler creative decisions. And then I think because those decisions are simpler, they're actually better decisions too. It's like you get to be more efficient and more creative because you've said these are our strategic guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we've certainly worked with plenty of clients, and we did this in our first couple years when we were primarily just a production company. We still do it occasionally today, where a creative concept is kind of floated at us, or an inspiration, or an idea, or a very loose email, and we're then being asked to come up with a killer creative concept, and yet nobody knows what this video or campaign or whatever is even trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we targeting with these things?
Where's it being distributed?
What do we want them to do? Where's it going to be? What do we want them to do when it is there? I mean, how are we getting it to them? Who are we targeting? All of those things are kind of like the Mad Libs blanks that need to be filled out, and then the rest of the creative concept can kind of come together. It's frustrating, in fact, to just have a mandate that says, hey, here's a thing that we did for some other medium, maybe. How do we make this into video or
What do you
videos?
mean by that?
Well, somebody came up with a great line of copy for a magazine ad, let's say. And
Are you reflecting on a client situation?
I'm trying to mix up a couple client situations so that if any of these clients or former clients are listening, I'm not taking 100% from that scenario.
Got it.
So I'm trying to mix up a couple of them here.
Obfuscate that a little.
But let's say that a client was doing, outside of the work they were doing with us, they put together a magazine ad, and they came up with a really great line of copy, like a tagline or something, that then they thought was enough to give us to inspire some kind of creative concept for a video or a campaign or something like that. That's to be honest, a better place to start than just what do we do next. But there's still a whole lot of questions that need to be answered, and that's why, at least when we work with our clients, we sometimes kicking and screaming pull them through that process of determining what those strategic
Or
guardrails are.
even worse, where someone and this happened a lot more 5 years ago than it does now, but they'll come to us and say, have you seen the Dollar Shave Club video? We want that. And they're like a B2B brand, and and you don't want to be viral if you're a B2B. You want to be very specific in who you're going to. But so they impose all these things that they don't know or they're imposing when they say, I want this concept.
Right.
So we have to peel it back a little bit. And that's why that's why we spent 37 minutes last time talking about strategy.
Okay. So yeah, I think bottom line there is the way that pre-production is an execution of your strategies, because you've basically set your parameters. And when you I see creativity as kind of getting to forks in the road. And when you have multiple options in front of you, one better serves the strategic goals of the project, and that's just telling you where to go on that.
I see it a little slightly differently, but I think we're both getting to the same place. I see creativity as you got two seemingly disconnected things, and you have to find the bridge to connect them.
Yeah.
And so those guardrails that we've put in place help you get there. And I think maybe just the decision making, essentially, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So maybe it all kind of ties together. Yeah. Your destination and your.
Yeah. Once again, we're making exactly the same point in two very different ways.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we have a podcast. That, and God knows there aren't enough podcasts in the world. So
right.
Might as well just jump in there and add to everything else that's there. Okay, so that completes phase 2 of our 7 phases, which then moves us, of course, into phase 3, which is production, which is the actual shooting or animating or capturing of the video or videos itself. When we give this talk as kind of an all-in-one presentation, we tend to skip right by this section.
Yeah.
Why is that?
It's a very complicated situation. Hopefully a lot of production is actually planned out in pre-production, and a lot of pre-production is planned out in strategy. So again, this is just even more execution based on more preparation, based on other preparation. I think part of it is because that's where we started, was production. Mm-hmm. We know how to focus a camera, how to set up a tripod, how to light something, how to mic them up. It's just that there are like, for us, we spend about 0.5% of our time on set. And so we just kind of fly through that as a you shoot it or whatever.
It's fundamentally necessary, but
yes.
and I even think to one of the workshops we went to early on, I think maybe it was Vincent Laforet's workshop. He said, which was pretty much about directing. And he said that 90 to 95% of a director's work is done before you get to set. Mm-hmm. And I think when you then back that up to include, especially in video for business and where we typically work B2B, it's almost like 99% of it is before the shoot, because it's all about why we're making it, what we're trying to do with it, all those things. And yes, I think you're right. I think people imagine us as on set and, with cameras all the time. And certainly the internship requests that we get through our site, all of those students are anticipating that they're going to have a fall semester on set every day. And then they are seemingly sorely disappointed when they get here. And so much of our work is on a whiteboard as opposed to, on set.
But I think another reason we skip over it is because we're more than anything, we're producers.
Yeah.
Our work is almost done on production day. We're just putting fires out or solving problems.
Well, and we do that because one of the things that we've learned since we started out as a two-man production company was that we know and work with people who are far better technically talented than the two of us are. Maybe we need to come up with a sound effect for this, but in a moment of true self-awareness and transparency, I think sometimes we feel too like we're trying to educate our audience too, that video for business is more than just making the video. And so I think we tend to kind of gloss over it because we think people are coming at it from it's 90% shooting, and we're trying to make it seem like it's a much smaller part of that.
Yeah, I think we're kind of forcing that on them.
Sometimes we go a little far with that, and I think that's a fantastic opportunity for us to bring in one of the people that we work with as a guest who can really get into production more in a future episode, because again, they know and do it better than we do. So we've planned a shoot, we've shot a shoot. Now what do we do with that? We've basically got footage on drives. And now, of course, we've got to hand it off to, again, someone more talented than either one of us to edit it, to color grade it, to tweak the audio, to add music, to add titles, graphics, those kinds of things that take raw footage and turn it into that kind of final MP4 deliverable file. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much all there is to post-production.
It can be complicated.
Sure.
When you start mixing live action with animation, and you've got to separate layers and build in sound effects and all those kinds of things, like post-production, that's probably where, if you're doing a big production, that's where the most people are involved, I feel like. Because on set, you can get away with a crew as small as like 4, or even if there's like 13, but like in post-production, there could be you've seen the credits to a movie. Almost all that is post-production these days, at least. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, it is a very complicated process. Should be treated with respect.
I mean, I think the opportunities to think strategically in post-production, again, I think a lot of the creative decisions have been made in pre-production and certainly by the end of the shoot. But you've still got things to tend with, like, are you baking in any calls to action? Is there a graphic driven call to action at the end, or is this something that you for lack of a better term, fades to black at the end because that in your your hosting platform where you're going to be distributing this, you're going to actually set different calls to action within the player. I mean, that can help you guide. We talk about it all the time. We may have even talked about it in the last episode, but like this is where you have the opportunity to make the mistake of putting to learn more, visit www.whatever, and then you embed that on your site and you've got someone to your site, you've got them watching your video, and then all you're asking them to do is go to where they already are.
Right.
So, I mean, there's certainly some of your strategy determines how much work may need to happen in this. I also strongly believe that even in the edit, it's that last bit of effort that can take something from, and it can be beautifully performed, beautifully written, beautifully shot, and just kind of, roughly put together in the edit. There's still a lot of work. Somehow, like the last 10% of work can add like 50% of polish to something. And so when you're talking about stuff that is maybe more awareness type content, needs to maybe have a higher production value, look better, sound better, reaching a broader audience, that's where you really want to have the right people putting in, the right kind of work to that. So I don't want to minimize what post-production is, because that makes that final video or videos as good as they can be. It's just that in the whole scheme of things, it's still one of 7 overall phases that need to be considered for everything that's being made.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I feel a little better about post-production just talking it through.
Yeah, we didn't just blow right through this time.
I think it helps when we break this up into 2 talks instead of 1 also.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're now moving to kind of the 3rd level in our pyramid, and we've got the 2 elements, the 5th and 6th phases here, that go very much together, just like the last 3 production phases. We've got distribution and then promotion. I think sometimes we're even confused about where the line is between distribution and promotion.
Plenty of gray area. Why don't you start with how we make it black and white, and then let's talk about that gray area.
Okay. So I as much as I'd love to credit myself, I think I just found this somewhere else, and I just don't remember where it was, so I can't credit it specifically. But the way that made the most sense for me to break it down was distribution is putting your video or videos anywhere that anyone can find them. Promotion begins when you're targeting that content to a specific audience. So distribution is I'm putting it in places for it to be found.
Like where?
YouTube.
Okay.
Embedding it on my website. Sharing it on LinkedIn.
Okay, so even posting it publicly on a social platform, you're saying, is still distribution.
I tend to think so.
So what is promote? Or
so
are you working something out?
Yeah, I mean, this is it's splitting hairs at this point. So we've already done the black and white. So if we're getting into more of the gray area, I tend to think of like taking a video and sharing it on a social channel is distributing it. The moment you start to attempt to reach specific people, even if it's unpaid, like using specific hashtags or at mentions of certain other brands or things like that, whatever you may do there, once you're trying to do that, then it tends to go into the realm of promotion. So there can certainly be a check out this video we just made for our brand new product. And if that goes out on any social channel, that's still just kind of a wide broadcast. Whoever finds it, finds it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start to hashtag industry things or get it so that it's more likely to show up on specific people's feeds, to me, that then becomes promotion.
Well, hashtags are there as a function of search.
Yeah.
So putting it on YouTube, you would put in your title, descriptions, tags, all those things, so that you could optimize your searchability.
Right.
Or your findability, however you want to say it.
Your resultability.
So is that exactly the gray line, or do you see a difference there?
Can I cop out and just say it's case by case? I mean, I think that's part of the struggle in figuring out where one begins and the other ends. But yeah, I think one is more passive and one is more active. right? One is chopping down the tree in the forest, not knowing if there's anybody there to hear it. The other one is chopping it down in a forest by a campground because you know there are people there. Mm-hmm. I don't like that metaphor, and I'm never going to use it again. But
we're always trying to find the truth in some of this stuff. So if if we come up, I'm sure in 3 months we'll have a slightly new tweak to that.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we are.
Well, and I think there's certainly an intersection in the Venn diagram. If you look at, let's say, LinkedIn, there's certainly an opportunity for LinkedIn to just be a distribution channel for you, but there's also an opportunity for it to be a paid and unpaid promotion channel for you. And the tricky part is that intersection may just be using LinkedIn as a distribution channel and an unpaid promotion channel. May be a very slight difference if there's any difference at all. But big picture, you don't have to promote something, but you got to distribute it. You've got to put it somewhere where people can find it. Even if it's a video that you're making for 3 people at a target, if you're doing an ABM approach and you're targeting one company and you made a video, personalized or otherwise, and you want that to reach 3 people, you've still got to actually put that video file somewhere that they can view it, that they can find it. There is no promotion without distribution, but there can be distribution without promotion. Mm-hmm. So you're certainly going to then promote that video and send an email to those 3 people saying, hey, watch this video I made for you. And that's the act of promoting it, but it's got to be put somewhere and distributed before you do that. And so if anybody's still listening and hasn't fast forwarded to the next section, I think that's really where I see the difference between distribution and promotion. Is distribution is passively putting it somewhere, and promotion is actively targeting.
It's that
content.
Publish and promote.
Yeah, well, and distribution to me is publish and optimize too. I mean, you got into.
I think optimize is probably that gray area.
That may be. Yeah, that could work. So optimizing is, like you were mentioning before, it's using your keywords in your titles and descriptions. It's selecting the right tags when you're putting it on whatever platform you're putting it on. It's making a thumbnail that's attractive. It's heck, depending on the platform you're using, it's how you compress the file so that it looks good, right? I mean, all those things are optimizing your distribution efforts. That then certainly helps you reach specific people. Mm-hmm. So that may be the bridge between distribution and...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because we could certainly put something on our Wistia channel, and it exists there. But if we don't embed that on the work section of our site and have a project name and a title and a description, like nobody's going to know. It
could never be found.
Yeah. But once we do that, then people could actually find it if they're searching for... the brand that we did the video for, mm-hmm. or they saw it somewhere else and, they saw one in a campaign and want to see the rest of the campaign, and they could find it on our work channel. Yes, if we're putting the right things in there, we could help them find that. Active or passive? I don't know. The question continues. I would be interested to hear what other people think on it too.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk at all about, while we're on distribution, before we move a little bit more into promotion, do we want to talk at all about some of the platforms that are available? If not specific platforms, certainly the different types of platforms mm-hmm. that are there.
Yeah.
I imagine we'll come back and do an entire episode about this at some point, but it is kind of an essential part of distribution. So
videos have to live somewhere. That's called hosting.
Yeah.
I don't know all the technical stuff beyond that, but it needs to be hosted somewhere. You can host it yourself on your own servers and make your own way through that whole process.
Sure.
For most businesses, that's not the best scenario. What tends to work for a lot of businesses is YouTube for a lot of reasons. And that's probably the most accessible hosting platform.
Well, and YouTube is certainly one of those that I tend to remove from the list of either or. YouTube is almost like whatever you got, make sure there's a version. I mean, unless it's something personalized. If it's for mass consumption, I tend to say put it on YouTube also.
Or a version of it.
Yes. Yeah. Because, again, second largest search engine in the world. I mean, that people are going to stumble upon your brand for the first time if you've well optimized your content that is on YouTube. It's going to show up in search results. Or for the 100th time.
Definitely. So YouTube, I think everybody understands that. There are a lot of benefits.
Would you recommend embedding YouTube on your website? Using YouTube to embed video on your site?
I might, but my biggest problem with YouTube, and I can't believe they haven't gotten there yet.
I know what you're going to say.
Is the insights that you can gather from viewer data. Like, even if it all lived on the same platform, but you paid a little bit to have a business account or something where you could gather that information. I don't know why they don't do that. I should just ask them. I know they've thought of it, and I'm sure they have a good reason for it.
Yeah. I even feel like I saw something a couple months ago about YouTube for business, and I was looking for it, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and I just couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just an idea. Maybe it's something that they think they're going to do. They did a presentation about it, and it's still coming. But
I've heard they're going to start offering some A/B testing, which generally has a business case. I'm trying to think from a consumer, like just I want to show, I mean, like there's always feel like a commercial reason to A/B test something.
I mean, certainly if you're doing pre-roll ads or anything like that can, well, of course, it's YouTube, which means it's Google. So anytime money is involved, anytime it's about ad spend, they're giving you much more robust features than they're giving to anybody who could post anything to YouTube. So what's maybe a step up from YouTube for business?
For business, I would say Wistia.
Okay.
There's a couple kind of in this area. Of course, there's Vimeo. I think Vimeo has actually some really great features, and it's evolved over time. It started more as like an artist platform, a place to showcase your work, kind of build portfolios.
No ads, no suggested next video.
Exactly.
Kind of you could the anti-YouTube.
You can control that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Wistia, I feel like, was born for business. And so they've got some free options, and so does Vimeo, and then some paid options that really kind of take your analytics to the next level, and integrations. So you can integrate some of these with your marketing automation and your CRM so that you can gather specific viewer data. You can see if Joe from Massachusetts watched this video 6 times, or if he watched this particular part a number of times. Where that becomes interesting, I think, is in a sales scenario. If you're talking to Joe from Massachusetts, but you haven't heard from him in a while, and then you see that you see that he's been engaging with this one video a couple times, and it looks like maybe he's got a question. Maybe I pick up the phone and dial Joe and say, "Hey Joe, I don't know if you know about this newest feature, but sounds like something that you might like. I wanted to see if there's if you had any questions about it. You know, whatever your approach is, you have that information."
So stalking for business is just called sales.
Yeah.
Okay, that explains a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think to me, like Vimeo's a good in between from between YouTube and Wistia. Wistia to me is you want to be capturing more information about your audience. Then if you take it to kind of the next level, for more enterprise level, I think it really starts to exceed the small to mid-sized business. Maybe it's some of the mid-sized business market. But then like Vidyard comes into play. And I feel like I don't know the exact timeline, but it feels to me like they waited like another 2 years to come into the game after Wistia did, and they knew they were going to make an enterprise play. And so they didn't have to concern themselves with the small to mid-sized businesses.
That's where they started.
Like Wistia. Did they really?
They started on mostly mid-sized businesses. By the time we went to Viewtopia in San Francisco, they had some enterprise clients, but they had been around for a little while and existed that way.
Well, they've certainly evolved to a point where at least for me, there's a clear distinction between Wistia and Vidyard.
Yes.
In terms of just the data and the analytics that you get to integrate with everything else that you're using.
The attribution models.
To be able to identify a viewer and then backfill their viewing history once you associate that viewer with an email address and know everything that they've ever watched before on your site.
Well, that is a Wistia feature too.
Is it really?
Yeah. But Vidyard, I feel like just has the much more robust integrations in general.
Well, yeah, and I feel like they're just included, whereas with Wistia, it's like you get, you kind of get to their custom level, and then you get a certain number of integrations, or like with Vidyard, it just all comes with the integrations that you need. I mean, the biggest thing for me on Vidyard was seeing that, specifically for Salesforce customers, that they can integrate with Salesforce, and as you use Salesforce down through to the close of the sales cycle, you can actually attribute specific revenue and specific deals to specific videos viewed, which is a tremendous tool for a marketing or sales department to have to, at the very least, understand what kind of return they're getting on their investment in video. Cue the manifesto talk. I mean, that's one of the key elements of practicing effective video for business is being able to show that return, and Vidyard makes it easier than anyone else that I've come across to enable the opportunity to track those kinds of things to that kind of level and show a dollar for dollar return based on closed deals and revenue won. Now, of course, that comes with a price tag.
Yeah.
And
not a lot of mid-sized businesses can. They can. It just depends on where they're going to prioritize their marketing and sales dollars.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest game changers over the next 2 years is how much everybody's going to kind of go from this place of, I get that video is engaging, I get that video is necessary, I get that I need to be doing video or more video or whatever, I just don't know how to attribute any success to it or results or revenue or anything. That's going to be a lot easier in the next 18 to 24 months because there are more companies coming out with this kind of technology. It's that's been the thing that I feel has been holding video back, is it's just so hard to say, well, it's really expensive to make this video, these videos, whatever. How do we know that it's doing anything for us? Well, now we get to kind of fill in that part of the equation and justify making more video content. Yep.
There are plenty of others out there. Bright Cove, it seems to be one of the top dogs in this area. They just acquired Ooyala not too long ago.
Say it again.
Ooyala, I want to say.
One more time.
Ooyala.
All right.
And they were the original enterprise hosting platform. Yeah. They were there before Vidyard. They went public, back in 2012. So they've been around for a while. But honestly, we haven't used them much. But they've got, I'm sure they have a lot or all of the features that Vidyard, Wistia, Vimeo have.
Some other things that they do well.
Yep.
It's probably in another transparency moment here. It's probably worth mentioning that we are a Wistia agency partner and a Vidyard agency partner. Doesn't mean that we're making any money off of talking about them here, but we just happen to know them better and we use both.
Yeah, we're also agency partners with other that we haven't even mentioned on here, and always kind of exploring some different opportunities. So there's still a lot for us to learn in this area. These are some of the bigger players, though. None of them have what YouTube has, though, and as the most basic thing and one of the freest things.
A huge audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's worth mentioning in terms of hosting videos, while we're still on that. There are some tools out there that I think a lot of people are starting to become aware of, but is still pretty new to the masses, are these one-to-one videos. And that's where I think we were introduced to Vidyard. they created, what was it called?
What was it? It's now Go Video. But
it's called Go Video now. But we used it before Go Video. And so it's a really cool tool. Now Wistia has it. It's called Soapbox. There are plenty of others out there. Some that are more, like BombBomb is more customer service oriented.
I got an email from a guy using Bonjoro.
Bonjoro, yeah. And there, I know there's plenty out there. Kaltura. But anyhow, there's some really cool sales tools where you can, and a lot of them have a free version, where you simply hit the Chrome extension and you can either record yourself, record your screen, or record both at the same time and make a quick little personalized video for a prospect, especially you keep it under a minute, 30 seconds, and you just hit stop record and it automatically compresses, uploads, hosts, and gives you a personalized link, a unique link that you can then put into an email or send via something else. You can post it on Twitter or wherever.
Well, and you can also create playlists and include some of your other.
That's true. Attach
maybe more
other
produced content.
Yep. And so they're just really great sales tools, and that is a feature of hosting. Like they end
That's
up
true.
being on that platform, and I've got God knows how many of those stacked up in our account for Go Video. They all have their own benefits as to which one you want to work with. So I'd suggest just kind of trying some of those out on your own. But
Okay, let's jump into promotion then.
all right.
I like to look at promotion, and we touched on this a little bit when we were kind of debating the Venn diagram intersection part of distribution and promotion. But I alluded to kind of promotion being in two flavors. There's unpaid promotion and there's paid promotion. So by my working definition, promotion is where you're actually targeting specific eyes to get onto this content. That could be as direct as creating a Go video for an individual, emailing it to them directly, and no one else is supposed to watch it, to taking something that maybe is intended to have a larger audience, but now you're targeting out specific demographics or specific behavioral elements or industry type or things that they like or whatever it is. You're putting it in places that make it more likely for those types of people to see it. As we discussed briefly before, I think the unpaid way to do that is as simple as starting to put relevant hashtags into social posts. That, to me,
Tagging people.
is tagging people. It's getting certain sets of people, making them more likely to see that type of content. Another promotion channel that it's certainly also a distribution channel, but is email. I mean, if you've got an email list, right, those are it could even not be segmented. I hope your list is segmented, but if your list isn't segmented, at least you know that it's segmented by people on your email list, people who are aware of you, right? People who have not unsubscribed, people who are on some active or passive level engaging with your brand, product, whatever already. So that's something that, again, you already own, you already utilize. That's a great way to do some unpaid promotion of particular video content, campaign, video, otherwise. The paid promotion, I think, is where it gets more interesting. Part of the reason I think it gets more interesting is because that's another opportunity to go back to the strategy that you laid out. Who are we targeting with this? Who do we want to see this thing?
Where are they?
Where are they? What do we want them to do? I mean, those are almost exactly, regardless of the platform, the things that you get to fill out as you're building out your ad buy. You have to answer those questions. And so ideally, you're not in a situation where you've made this video, you're starting a paid campaign on LinkedIn, and you're seeing these screens for the first time and thinking, who do I want to target with this? Well, I mean, it's almost the kind of thing you could put off on an intern and say, here's our strategic guidelines for this, and they just get to kind of fill in the blanks.
And execute
that promotion, as loose as it is, a promotion strategy that you built out in your strategy.
Yes. I mean, I think that because the promotion and distribution plans of your video content can be so instrumental in the creative element, that it needs to be done in strategy.
Yes.
Because it can influence the way your creative is developed.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I know platforms are changing, but most people remember when Instagram only allowed, or even when they didn't allow video. So obviously you couldn't do it there, but then they allowed video, but it can only be a minute. Or the aspect ratio is a certain size, or you can get more screen if you make a 1:1 aspect ratio on Facebook than you can if you do 16:9.
Autoplay with sound or autoplay without sound.
Yeah. Then do you want to grab someone's attention because you're in a feed, or do you have them captive? All those different things can really control your creative, which may mean you end up making 50 different varieties of the same video where the core content is the same, but the intro is different. And this one has subtitles, and this one has a different call to action because you know that they're going to be watching this on a television and not on the web.
Or God forbid, I'm less against vertical video now because I see its place in Instagram stories, things like that. But like, if you know that this is going to be something that's going to be part of an Instagram story ad, well, you best be framing your shot back in production so that it works as a vertical video. Even if you're not turning the camera and shooting it that way, people have to fit into that frame so that you're not cutting off half of the people on your screen or whatever.
I've seen a lot of folks turning their cameras these days sideways.
Yeah.
On major productions.
Yeah.
For the stories.
Yeah. And of course, that all applies to the typical social channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, those kinds of things. Programmatic is another entire ball of wax when it comes to promotion.
There are a lot of screens on programmatic.
Yeah, I mean, so programmatic, for those who don't know, is basically anything between like the ad that you see play before the news story on CNN.com that you're trying to watch to the commercials that are on Hulu and kind of everything in between. So typically oftentimes those are handled by one source. There's one what am I trying to say? Product?
It's the bottleneck is where you feed.
It's one platform where basically you set your targeting and then you select all of the different places that it can play. And then of course with that there's all kinds of ad bidding and stuff that goes on. They're doing all of that, all those algorithms and everything based on the parameters that you set up, and you may or may not end up showing up before a particular show, particular episode, particular video, whatever it is. So programmatic essentially, though, has the same kind of demographic and behavioral kind of settings that you can set so that you're targeting the right audience. Right. It just might be a much wider array of sites or places that your ad may show up on.
Sure.
Okay, so we've planned the video, we've made the video, we've distributed the video, we've even promoted it to particular people. So some people have watched it. Are we done?
Yes.
All right. Good job, everybody. I would argue that we're not done. I would say that we need to actually now learn from how our audience has interacted with the content that we've created. So the seventh and final phase here is analysis. And analysis is essentially kind of, it's basically 3 points. It's gathering your metrics, interpreting those metrics and understanding what kind of insights you can glean from them, and then determining what to change, what to do next.
Some platforms, as we mentioned earlier, the hosting platforms, are going to give you different types of metrics, and where you receive those metrics can be varied as well. I know that Vidyard, and I'm sure Bright Cove and others, actually build custom dashboards for Salesforce so that you can get an understanding of which sales reps are using these and which ones seem to be working well, which ones can convert customers. And I would venture to say, when you do the programmatic, they're giving you sets of data to help you understand where things were consumed, what bids worked. Should you up your spend? Should you lower it? Should you go on different days? All those types of things. So
based on your spend, how many people did you actually reach versus who you thought you would reach? Things like that. Yeah. Okay.
From there, I don't know any platforms that generate insights for you. I'm sure those are coming.
Sure. AI.
Yeah. But that's where the human element comes back in. You've got to either work alone or with your team and figure out, okay, what did we learn here? What did we set out to do? What happened? And then the why. What's between those 2 points?
This goes back to a key point from the strategy episode is you've got to define your metrics of success in the strategy phase. You've got to say at the beginning, we'll know this was successful if this, this, and this. And it's fine if those are arbitrary because you're just getting into the space. You're making an educated guess and saying, I think I'll be happy if we can reach this many people, get this kind of click-through rate on it, attribute this much revenue to it, whatever those things are, because now is your opportunity to actually look at the results and say, did that happen or not? And if it didn't, it doesn't mean it was a failure. It may be just as likely that your initial goals were a little too arbitrary and a little too high. Well, that's fine. You're going to make some tweaks, even if it's to your expectations, for now the iteration part of it and using it again. So you get to, this is what gives you the opportunity to take those metrics, put them in front of somebody who knows what they mean and say, this is what we should do now. Because, and this goes back, manifesto, this goes back to video being a practice, right? Video is not a make it and you're done. First of all, it's not a deliverable. I think we've established that, but it's not even just make it once, put it out there, and then move on to the next thing. What did we learn from this so that we can make the next version of this video or the next video we do better because we now have more information than we had before. That's the key, is to keep trying to get better and better so that once you go through it a couple times, you're getting better about setting your metrics of success. And then you're better able to understand if something was successful and if you're getting the return on it you want. And all those things kind of feed into themselves. And I also think that a big part of this is setting the right metrics of success and attributing them to the right type of actual metrics you can get. Sure, there's what I like to call vanity metrics that are, play rate, number of plays, engagement, those kinds of things. Those are all well and good, and they may tell you more about the content itself if it was too long, if it spoke to the points that your audience wants it to speak to. If it was, those kinds of things can even get down to if you embedded it in the right place on your website. If the play rate is low, maybe it's not easy enough for people to find it.
Maybe it's the thumbnail.
But then if you can get into more of those enhanced analytics, click-through rates, conversions, leads captured, revenue generated, those kinds of things that are more available in those more robust platforms, that's where you really get to understand how it's affecting your business, more so than those vanity metrics that tell you more about
views.
Did we make the right thing? And maybe did we get it in front of the right people? Is it actually having an impact?
I saw a friend on this. This is just kind of complaining, so maybe we'll cut this out. But saw a friend on LinkedIn say, we produced our first commercial and we got 1.8 million views. So we decided to step it up and beef up production and everything. And our new goal is whatever views. And that may be all you need, but I know for the kind of company he's running, it's not about views. And it was surprising because he's a director of marketing and was just disappointed to see that. He actually used to own an agency. So I hope he knows what he's doing, but I was a little worried for him.
I don't know. I have seen video confuse the most experienced marketing people out there, and I don't.
It's so nuanced. I mean, we run into new things every day because the industry is changing so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, even 6 months ago, I would not see the position of online video expert on LinkedIn anywhere. Now I'm starting to see those pop up at companies.
Yeah.
And if you don't have one of those on your staff, you should be working with someone who really knows what they're doing, or at least has a lot more experience. I mean, there's all levels of affordability, and sometimes you can't have somebody on salary, but it certainly would be nice. I know if you're using video a lot, to have that internal resource would be fantastic.
Well, and that reminds me of something that you like to bring up a lot, is that, video, you can learn so much more about what your audience is consuming through video than you can through like a white paper, right?
A blog.
You get a download, or you get an email because they went through a gate to get a white paper. You don't know if they've read it, how many times they've read it, which parts they've read.
Did they share it?
Did they share it? Did they go back to it 3 months later and read it again? With video, you can know those things. And that just means that there is more data. There are more metrics, and it is harder to understand, and there's more to go through to get the greater insights that you can get through using video. So it does kind of require that whole ecosystem. A lot of what we talk about when we're taking on new clients is, do you have the infrastructure to get into video?
I ask that in the sales process because sometimes if they don't, it's better that we don't enter into video.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that completes our talk finally on the 7 phases of practicing effective video. It starts with a foundation of strategy. Then you've got your 3 production stages, distribution and promotion, which are inextricably tangled together. And then, of course, analyzing what all of that means so that you can then go back to strategy, revise it, and do it all over again.
So alas, the 7th step is not the final step.
It's like the 8th step is the first step.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Cool. All right. Well, I think that does it for this episode of this as yet unnamed podcast. We will see you next time talking about something else video related. But for now, I'm Ben.
I'm Justin.
See ya.
So long.
Bye. Auf Wiedersehen.
Stay fresh, cheesy eggs.